Your Bibles with me will be in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 here in a moment. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, about verse 12 might be a good place to turn your Bibles to this morning. Words out promoting my feet before I trip and fall in front of everybody. That'd be embarrassing. Tim would have it on camera and everything too. It might become a YouTube sensation really quickly. I can imagine all the titles people could post and everything on there. But certainly good to be here this morning. As we have less of an audience this morning as we did last week. We have a lot of visitors, a lot of people here with us, and then we have a number that are traveling. So we do pray for them as they're out and about and intend to be traveling this evening. Me and the family will be traveling next Friday, going down to San Antonio and be down there for the week, spend some time with my family. And I certainly do appreciate the elders and allowing us to do so. But Thomas Miles, I believe, is going to be here next week doing the preaching and teaching for us. And I always miss hearing Thomas doing so hopefully they'll record him, and that way I'll get to hear it again. He always does an excellent job, and I know he'll do. Y'all enjoy him, so be looking forward to next Sunday. But I don't know if you know or not, but the U.S. Supreme Court recently passed legislation on May 14th now saying that it is legal for all states to have legalized sports gambling. Now, of course, this means it's up to each and every individual state to decide if, as a state, they're going to allow gambling, sports gambling, to be legalized. And a lot of states have already decided that it's going to be okay for legalized sports gambling in their own home state. And you can imagine the course of states that they're going to take on, or the number of states that are soon going to follow course of these other states that are going to eventually legalize sports gambling because they're going to be able to tax it and they're going to be able to make revenue off of it. And when I heard this, I thought to myself, how interesting. Not that I gamble by any means, and I think it's interesting in the fact that here we are, with another moral issue that's going to be confronting Christians. Not that it has started on May 14th when the U.S. Supreme Court passed this legislation. I haven't had my head underneath a rock for the last 100 years. I'm not 100 years old, but you get the idea. It's a problem that's been in the church for centuries, but it is interesting in the fact that gambling is going to be a whole lot easier to do here in the near future than it has been in the past. And what does that mean for Christians? What does that mean for the church itself? To the point that many people who profess to be Christians won't think anything about it, and will probably come numb to it because we're going to see it all around about us. To the point that it might not even really matter anymore to us. And we might need to start thinking because, let's face it, everyone else is doing it, so why can't we do it? I mean, it's not harming anyone, right? No one's trying to make money at it. Some people, they just have a little extra cash on the side, so why not try their luck with old lady luck? It's only once, a lot of people will say. It's not like I'm addicted or anything, right? Or wrong. That's what I would like for us to take a look at this morning with our Bibles. I would like for us to study and maybe hopefully leave here this morning and answer the question, is gambling okay? And for us to answer this question, I think we need to first and foremost understand what gambling is, because the word gambling is not found anywhere in this book. It's not found, you will not find the word gamble written anywhere here in the Bible. Because it seems, though, everywhere we turn, though, we can see an increased emphasis on gambling. I mean, if you just think about it for a minute, everywhere you turn, you see signs about gambling. From betting on college football games. You walk into a convenience store, and the first thing you notice right there on the counter, you can pick up your lottery tickets. All the way to selling raffle tickets. Yes, raffling tickets to raise money for schools or whatever the case might be, or the local Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. It's almost as if gambling is now our new national pastime. It's surpassed baseball itself and pie. the point that I read an article just the other day when I was studying about this very thing, and that article said, as a U.S. population as a whole, U.S. population as a whole lost over $1 billion last year in gambling. And that is a $1 billion in gambling. So, what does that word mean, gambling? So the first thing I do is I go to old Google.com. And I put in the search engine gambling. And old Google brings up Webster's Dictionary for me, my old Webster's Dictionary. I don't have to go in that big thick book anymore and thumb through all the pages and try to find the word gamble. I can just pop it up on my computer screen, and I notice that Webster's defines gambling for me as to play a game for money or property, to bet on the uncertain outcome. Another dictionary, the World Dictionary, defines gambling as to play a game of chance for money or other value stakes, to gamble at cards, to gamble on the result of a race. This gives us some examples of it. But what's important to understand about gambling is the fact there are three elements of gambling. The first element of gambling is the uncertain event. The second element of gambling is a stake, and the third element of gambling is you always have a winner and you always have a loser. But what's equally important to understand is what gambling is not. Gambling is not a risk. People are thinking to themselves, they're kind of looking at me like crazy because, yes, the word gambling in one sense does mean to take a risk. The dictionary definition defines it that way. But a mere risk is not gambling itself. In the sense of the definition gives us, as Mr. Webster's Dictionary, the World Dictionary gave us, and I point this out because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of people in the church who have a gambling problem or who don't see anything wrong with gambling in itself, who are going to try to justify gambling on the basis of it's just merely taking a risk. They will say things like this to you. They'll say, everybody takes risks every day. They'll say, let me give you an example. It's a risk every day when I cross the road. Isn't that a risk? Isn't that a gamble? But what these people fail to realize is the fact that the risks that is involved in crossing the street are not arbitrary and deliberately determined, as in the case of placing a wager on the outcome of an uncertain event. When you cross the road, you're pretty certain you're going to get to the other side. I mean, most people go out there, they look both ways. We talk from the time we're little. I stop the boys. Whoa! Did you forget to do something? Oh, yeah. Look both ways. Make sure no cars are coming either way. Then we cross. We cross at the crosswalk. We cross at the intersection where we can see all the traffic, or we get our time to cross over. One of Jensen and Jonah's favorite things to fight over is that little button on the sign to get the crosswalk person to come up. They keep hitting it over and over. I think we pushed it already. We just have to wait now. Make sure no cars are coming. You see, crossing the road is not a gamble. It's not a risk. Now, if you were to place a wager, a stake, $5 wager with maybe James or someone in the audience, or maybe Shane, that if they pay you $5 if you cross 635 10 times without getting hit by a car. Now that's an uncertain event. If he's going to actually get across 635 10 times back and forth, there's a stake at place, a $5 wager, and there's going to be a winner, and there might be a loser on the end of it. So you see the difference, right? And some are going to say, well, there's also the fact that you don't find that word gamble in the Bible. So how can we even answer this question this morning? Is gambling a sin? Or is gambling even okay for Christians to do? Or should I not be gambling? Or better yet, some will say, well, if gambling is not found anywhere in the Bible, then it has to be okay. Because God didn't say, not to do it. He didn't give us a thou shalt not gamble commandment, so therefore it's okay to some people in their logic. So let's notice what gambling is not, though, because a lot of people with that mentality, they'll even go as far out as saying, well, isn't farming a gamble? Isn't farming or business adventures a risk? Yes, there are risks involved in farming. Yes, there are risks involved in opening and starting your own company. You can ask Tim all about it. But farmers or businessmen are not seeking to gain at the loss of another person. This does not fit the gambling model. When you're on the farm, there's no uncertain event. You plant a crop with an idea that your crop's going to come out. You put all the labor in. Yes, there's a little bit of a stake that the crop might not come in, but still, there's not a winner and there's not a loser. It's not buying and selling stocks, as some people will try to bring up. Which also does not fit the model of gambling by any means. When you buy and you sell stocks, you have bought something of a value. If that business thrives, then all people benefit. You don't have three essential elements of gambling. You don't have a winner, you don't have a loser per se. And then some other people say, well, isn't insurance a gamble? Isn't insurance a risk? Some think there's no difference in gambling and buying life insurance or maybe car insurance. When you buy your insurance, you're buying a financial protection. The buyer and the company both gain by the purchase of a policy. The risk that's involved is created by buying of an insurance policy. Again, it does not fit the definition of gambling by any means, and it doesn't fit the model of gambling. There's no uncertain stake or winner or loser of buying an insurance policy. So what about a prize then? When a person registers to win a prize at the grand opening of a store, or receives a prize that's given away for advertisement, aren't they gambling? Has there been an uncertain event? Has there been a stake? Has there been a winner and a loser? Gambling is not determined either, also, we have to understand, by size or degree. It doesn't matter if it's a $50 wager or a $5, 50-cent wager. If the three elements are there, if you have the uncertain event, if you have a stake, and you have a winner and a loser, then you have gambling. So matching pennies, pitching pennies, flipping for a Coke of coffee is just as much as gambling as buying a lottery ticket or placing a $2 bet at a Kentucky Derby. You know what's really interesting about gambling? You know there's a support group for these people. It's called Gamblers Anonymous. People who are absolutely addicted to gambling itself. And you know what Gamblers Anonymous tell these people not to do? They say, do not flip for who's going to buy coffee. It's gambling. There's a winner and there is a loser. You see, gambling's not a risk. Gambling is also not a donation. Many people try to justify or support their gambling habits and say, well, what about when you buy a raffle ticket? Isn't that gambling? And some objections on the ground of gambling reply usually, well, it's not gambling, it's just a donation. But if you look at raffle tickets, it is gambling. And I really didn't think about this until I started studying down and I started thinking about the model of a raffle ticket. Is there an uncertain event? I mean, I remember the local fire department was putting on a raffle for an AR-15, and I was like, ooh. I mean, it's only like $5 to get in on this raffle. Imagine if you could buy an AR-15 for $5. Or this year they had a huge trailer, and it was really nice, a 16-foot trailer with a fold-down back, and they wanted $20 for a raffle. And I was like, man, could you imagine if you paid $20 and you got it? But is there an uncertain event? Well, yeah, there is an uncertain event. You may or may not get the item that's being raffled off. Is there a stake? Yes. It costs $20 to buy the raffle ticket, or $5 to buy the raffle ticket. Is there a winner or loser? Well, if I don't get the trailer, I lost my $20. Yes, I can look at it as a donation. I've technically donated to the local fire department, and they get to go buy new equipment and apparatus and all those things. But there is a winner and loser, so people could arbitrarily say raffles are a form of gambling also. So then there's always the question, well, why is gambling a sin? Gambling's a sin because, number one, it's addictive. The very existence of Gamblers Anonymous suggests that gambling in any fashion or form that you have is very addictive. And the Apostle Paul affirms this. And he affirmed the idea that he wouldn't allow anything to control him as a human being. If you're in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 12, he writes these words to the Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 12, he says, "All things are lawful unto me, but not all things are expedient." He says, "All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any." It seems as though many people who profess to be Christians forget that what Paul writes about. We forget that very fact that yes, all things are lawful, but it doesn't mean that it's okay. Yes, all things are lawful, but it's probably not the best situation to find ourselves in or be caught up in. Because when you think about gambling really falls under the class of covetousness. While gambling is not found anywhere in the Bible, it is found in covetousness, which the Bible talks a lot about. Because no matter what we say about gambling involves an inordinate desire to gain without giving something of equal value. It seeks to get an expense of others. The gambler is willing for others to lose all their time, effort, and money in order that they might come out on top. They might win. Me and the boys, we just went and watched a movie the other day, and they were gambling in there. I was like, oh no, this is not good. I'm preaching about this Sunday. We want to watch Star Wars, not to ruin it. It's about Han Solo and how he gets the Millennium Falcon. Did you know it was at a card table? And of course, it was some Star Wars card thing, and he was playing for money, and he puts up the guy who owns the Millennium Falcon puts up the keys for the Millennium Falcon on the table. There was an uncertain event about to take place. I said, uh-oh, there is a stake, the Millennial Falcon of all things. If you're a Star Wars person, you know how great that is. And then also there's a winner and there's a possible loser. I'm not going to ruin the movie for you, but someone had a card underneath their sleeve. Someone won the game and someone lost the game. They were gambling. And it wasn't okay. Because a person was willing to take advantage of another individual at that table. A person was not willing to put the work in to receive what they were supposed to receive. Listen to what Paul says about that. In Colossians chapter 3 and verse 5, when we go to our Bibles and his letter to the Colossians, in Colossians 3:5, he puts it like this. He says, "Mortify therefore your members which are upon this earth, fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affections, evil concupiscence, covetousness, which is idolatry." These things shouldn't be found in us. He even warned his young protege, Timothy, when he wrote his first letter to him in 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 10. He wrote to him saying, "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have earned from the faith that pierced themselves throughout with many sorrows." So, gambling, it involves the principle, it violates the principle of the golden rule, which is to love others as you would love your own selves. Anyone who gambles does not show a love to another person. And just think about it. I mean, there's an uncertain event, there's a stake, and there's always a winner and loser. So sorry for your bad luck, Jensen, but you're a loser, the sister always says. And he gets his feelings hurt. And he goes to his mama, and he goes, "Sissy called me a loser." And then he does it back to her, right? And it's not the golden rule, the very thing Jesus said about talking Matthew recorded in Matthew 22:39, and he says, "And is second like to you, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Why are we taking advantage of one another? I never forget when I was a kid, my brother got in so much trouble because he got caught gambling with one of his friends. And we weren't raised in the church by any means, but his friend was a Kansas City Royals fan. I mean, this kid bled blue and white. He was such a Kansas City Royals. We lived outside D.C. And how do you become a Kansas City Royals fan when you live outside D.C.? But these were back in the days of some of the great baseball players. But Kansas City wasn't any good, and they lost all the time. And my brother, he's a smart businessman, and he realized this really fast as young and freshman in high school. So he started gambling. He started betting his friend every time the Royals played. He says he would take the other team. Oh, they're playing the Red Sox tonight? Well, I bet you the Red Sox will beat the Royals. Oh, they're playing the Yankees tonight. Well, I bet you the Yankees will beat the Royals. The young man lost tons of money to my brother that year. My brother was rolling in the cash. My brother was really happy till my parents died. And I remember to this day, my dad made him give that young man all that money back that he took from him. Because my dad said, "This is your friend. And you deceived him over an uncertain event. Yes, y'all made a wager together. Y'all agreed upon it. But there's a winner and there's always a loser." And he said, "How would you feel if you were always the loser? How would you feel if someone you cared about, someone who said they cared about you, took what you worked so hard for?" So my brother went back and gave all the money back to his friend, supposedly, as he says. It violates the golden rule. Love one another as you will only love yourselves. Paul teaches that we should seek the welfare of others. He says, "Let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth," in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 24. Gamblers violate the most basic rule of human relationships, and that golden rule. And Jesus said in Matthew 7:12, "Therefore all things whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do you even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets." Would you want someone to take advantage of you over an uncertain event? Make a wager that you can become a loser at? We live in a world that's increasingly lax on the subject of gambling. And it's just going to get worse from this legislation that was passed on May 14th. I mean, we see it all around us right now. We hear about it all the time with the college athletes being paid off for their participation in college sports and all the gambling that goes on in college sports. It becomes so lax, it's going to get to the point that no one's going to think anything about it, even Christians. Even people who say they're the children of God. And many people think that gambling is not mentioned in the Bible, then there's nothing wrong with it. It's simply not true, because nowhere does the Bible talk about rape. Is that okay? Nowhere does the Bible talk about suicide. Is suicide okay? Nowhere in the Bible does the Bible talk about larceny. Does it talk about bootlegging? Does it talk about child pornography? Are all those things okay? It's because God doesn't give us a "thou shalt not" in our New Testament pages. It's not mean by any means that gambling is okay. Or any of these other moral issues that are going to confront Christians that we're going to talk about as we go throughout this. So I hope this morning we can see that gambling, no matter what our world says around us, is not okay. John says, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, is not of the Father, but of the world. And the world passes away. But he that abides in the Father will live forever." So where do we see? First and foremost, are we a child of God? Are we a Christian? The Bible teaches us our faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God in Romans chapter 10 and verse 17. The question is do we believe that he is the Christ, the Son of the living God? That this is his will and the testament, that we're to follow it. Jesus himself says, except you believe I am he, you shall die in your sins, in John 8:24. He says, except you repent, you shall all likewise perish, in 13:3. He tells us in Matthew chapter 10, when Matthew was recorded, it said, whosoever shall confess me before men, him shall confess also before my Father which is in heaven. But whosoever shall deny me before men, him shall deny also before my Father which is in heaven. It also teaches us that we have to be born again. We go to the Gospel of John, John chapter 3, the first 7 verses, and he says, verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, cannot see the kingdom of God. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. John 3 and verse 7. He told his apostles that all power had been given in him in heaven and earth. In the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew chapter 28, he told them, go therefore, teach all nations, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach them to observe all things whatsoever I commanded you, and lo, I'm with you always in the world. Amen. So what has he told us to do? Hear the gospel, believe, confess, repent, be baptized for remission of sins, and live faithfully to the Lord of lords and the King of kings. So maybe you have a gambling problem. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have some other issue that's confronting you. John says, whosoever transgresses and abides not in the doctrine of Christ has not God. He that abides in the doctrine have both the Father and the Son. So we need to make our lives right with God today. Please do so while we stand. We sing a song for all of our